Uh, we're holding Daf Yudalit Amid Beis by the Tashema. Today's Daf is Daf Tezvav 15, and we should be able to gain some ground today. We're in the middle of the discussion, a very interesting discussion. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, when they had a radical opinion, when Beis Shammai had a radical opinion, the question of the Gemara was, did Beis Shammai follow through and say, no, we're going to separate the group of Beis Shammai, said, we're going to always do what Beis Shammai said, and paskin like that. And that comes up over here by Tsaras Erva. We know that over here, when there was a Tsaras Erva, let's say Ruvain falls to Yibam Rachel, his daughter. So our Mishnah says there's no Yibam to the Tsara, the co-wife. But Beis Shammai says you could do Yibam to your co-wife. In fact, you have to do Yibam Chalitza. She can't just go scot-free. So the Gemara's question was, now that we have a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and the really why it comes up mostly in Masechta Yevamos, because if you follow through like Beis Shammai, according to Beis Hillel, the child is a mamzer. Because if the brother would marry that co-wife, according to Beis Hillel, it's an Eishes Ach, and that child could be a mamzer. So did Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel say? And so there's two reasons why Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel did not follow through. One is that they said their opinion, but they recognize A, that the Beis Hillel was the majority, or B, that there was a baskol, a voice from heavens that says, don't paskin, we paskin like Beis Hillel. So the question the Gemara is dealing with, did Beis Shammai follow through and in their small little group, did they do what they held? So Tashma come in here. Even though Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argue when it came to tzaros in our Mishnah, co-wives, achoyes is sisters. We're not going to go through each one, but these are questions in ervas, arayas, and question in marriage. And Suffolk Ashes Ish and Ashes Ish. I'll just mention one of them. Beget Yashim, Sveik Ashes Ish, Uvagaris is Ishte Vilani Ime Bebtundak. Let me give you another example. A guy, where there's a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Guy gave a divorce for his wife, and then they went together to a hotel. So what's the din with the wife? So Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel said that the woman she just had kedushin again because she slept with her former husband, so that invalidates the get, possibly because a person, when he could be mekadesh a woman by just living with her, by having bia with her. That's what Beis Hillel said. So she's a suffix if she's an Ashish. Maybe the guy just wanted to have znus, but didn't do it for kedushin. Beis Shammai says no. The get is kosher. He doesn't need a new get. So Beis Hillel says you need a brand new get, and Beis Shammai says you don't need a brand new get. Guess what? According to Beis Shammai, if the woman goes out and goes to marry somebody else after that story, according to Beis Hillel, she might be a Suffolk Ashes, and the kid born from that will be a mamzer. So again, a lot of questions that they had with each other. The kesef v'shava kesef. They had a bepruta b'shav pruta. There's a machlokes. What is the value of the coin that you be mekadesh and ish with? So they had many arguments in Seder Noshim. Says the Brisa, but nevertheless, they never stopped from marrying into each other's family. To teach you, they had a love for each other and friendship with each other, and they actually married into each other's families. So from the first part of this brisa, it would seem that Beis Shammai did not follow through in whatever they held. In fact, they always went like Beis Hillel and said, "Okay, you're right. We are not going to paskin the way we said," and therefore they can marry into each other's families because they both are holding the same things. Rab Shimon nimna'u. They did not marry into each other's family. Heimin avadai. When they for sure had a disagreement, and if it's a for sure problem, like in our case, a tzara, the co-wife, according to Beis Shammai, you do yibam on the co-wife, and according to Beis Hillel, if you do yibam on the co-wife, the kid's a mamzer. So in those situations, Beis Hillel did not marry into Beis Shammai's family. But like nimnu min asafik, if Beis Hillel was just machmir, and like the case where divorcing a wife and then sleeping with her in a hotel, that case, since it's a suffix ashes ish, they didn't hold back from marrying. If there was a problem in that family that did that, Beis Shammai's and Beis Hillel's families would marry into each other. So now this question, nimnu, that they stopped marrying into each other's family, Amr Bishlama also, if you'd say that Beis Shammai upheld their viewpoints, and even after the voice from heaven, the Baskel came down, Paskin like Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai still did what they did. Therefore, Mishim Hachu Nimnu. Then I understand why Beis Hillel did not marry into Beis Shammai's family, and why Beis Shammai didn't marry into Beis Hillel's family, because there could be mamzeris there. Eli Amrit Loy Asu. If you want to say that Beis Shammai said their opinion, but always acquiesced and always gave it to Beis Hillel, they said, "You're right." Amai Nimnu. Then why did they not marry into each other's family? So the Gemara asks back, "V'tizbara, does this make sense?" It's very good that you said that what? That Beis Shammai went with their position, upheld their position. So it still don't make perfectly sense, because Bishlam Beis Hillel Nimna Beis Shammai. I can understand why Beis Hillel's family, the group of Beis Hillel, did not want to marry into Beis Shammai's family, because according to Beis Shammai's family, the Yabam did a Yibam with the co-wife. That's the Chayav Krisis new. According to Beis Hillel, that's doing having a relationship and marrying somebody who you're supposed to Chayav Krisis, and therefore umamzerim ninhem. The child that comes out from that union is a mamzer le Beis Hillel, according to Beis Hillel. So I understand why Beis Hillel refused to marry into Beis Shammai's family. Ela Beis Shammai and my niminum Beis Hillel. So the Gemara just wants to understand, why would Beis Shammai refuse to marry into Beis Hillel? What's the worst that can happen? According to Beis Hillel, the co-wife goes without a chalitza, without a yibam. If a stranger marries her, he's only over a lav, and the children are not mamzerin, they're kosher children. Bnei chayove lavin ninu ksherim ninu. They'll be sons of chayve lavin and the ksherim. So why did Beis Shammai hold back from marrying into Beis Hillel's family? Answers the Gemara. True, they would marry each other's family, but the co-wife herself, Beis Shammai would not marry into Beis Hillel's family if the co-wife left without a chalitza. Without a chalitza or something, a chalitza. So that's when Beis Shammai would not go to Beis Hillel's family. So this ends the proof. I'm telling you right now, ends the proof that when Beis Shammai in the Mishnah says an opinion, even after the Baskoil and even after they figured out they're the minority, they still upheld their opinions. They're the fringe group that held their opinions. Nevertheless, so the Gemara asks the question, Rab Shimon said that when it's a suffix ish, they did not hold back from marrying into each other's family. Why not? If it's a suffix ish, according to Beis Hillel, why would they marry into Beis Shammai's family if there's a doubt that it could be an ish? And says the Gemara, a suffix. Don't say that they didn't marry each other when there's a suffix ish. For sure, when there was a suffix ish, base question, Beis Hillel did not, they called off the shidduch between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. If they didn't say anything, if a member of Beis Hillel's group marries into Beis Shammai's group and the mechutanim don't say anything, so then they can marry each other, because that part we know that if there was a problem, they would notify the shadchan that, according to Beis Hillel, you would consider us not kosher. The moidelu, they would notify the Beis Hillel group, uparshi, and then they would call off the shidduch. Umay kamashmal. What's the point of all this? That despite that they had major differences in Masechta Noshim, which according to one group is a mamzer, and according to another group it's not. The av of Arayas Nagam Zabazeh, that they love and camaraderie between each other. So the Gemara says Hainu Reisha, but isn't that what the Tanakama said? So what is Rab Shimon adding to that? So the Gemara says Rab Shimon. This whole brisa was Rab Shimon, and he's explaining himself. They had shalom, they married into each other, but they only married into each other when it was not for sure. When they were notified that there's no problem here, but if they had an issue with it, they did not marry into each other's family. And so what we do see from all this is that Beis Shammai always upheld their in the time of the Gemara, in the time of the Mishnayos, if you went to a city somewhere, there was always a fringe group like Beis Shammai that had different viewpoints. And sometimes, according to Beis Hillel's camp, which was the majority, some of those people were mamzerim. Tashma, come in here. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri wanted to make shalom. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said, "Hey, b'Yisrael. How could you have this situation in the Jewish people? Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. If you go nasa k'divrei Beis Shammai, if we paskin like Beis Shammai and allow everybody to go like Beis Shammai, well, and we allow the yabam to marry the co-wife, havalad mamzer l'divrei Beis Hillel. There would be a mamzer according to Beis Hillel, because if we allow the yabam to marry the eshes ach, the co-wife, according to Beis Hillel, that's a mamzer. Nasa k'divrei Beis Hillel. If we go like Beis Hillel and let this co-wife go free without anything, Havalad pogam l'divrei Beis Shammai. According to Beis Shammai, the child that's born from this union is a child born from a shidduch that an Isser Lav was. An Isser Lav was that the woman just goes free without having chalitza, and therefore the child would be considered, if it was a kohen, it would be possible to be a kohen, and also if it's a girl, it wouldn't be able to marry a kohen. Boy, so he said, let's make it you want universal din and make shalom between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. How do you make peace? Boy, we should always make a rule for the co-wife of the erva. We go to Daf Tezvav and Aleph. That they should all get chalitza and not get yibam. So that's a great idea. Let's not, and then everybody, even Beis Shammai would say, if you got chalitza, that's okay. And Beis Hillel can say, what's wrong? You get a chalitza, you didn't need it, but you got one anyway. The Gemara says, it would have passed. This idea would have passed, but something came up and it stopped it from passing. Why? What was wrong with this bill? What was wrong with this idea? Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel spoke up to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and said, according to what if we went like if things went through Beis Shammai, if Beis Shammai upheld their opinion, now then what happens was that there's already mamzerim in the world. So if we're going to tell you that, if we're going to tell you now, from now on you need chalitza, the ones that did yibim already, according to Beis Shammai, you're going to say they're all puzzle, so they're not going to agree to this idea, because this will retroactively disqualify all the people that did yibim on the co-wife up until now, up until Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri's generation. That ends the brisa. So the Gemara says it must be Yamar Bishlama also. If you say that Beis Shammai always upheld their opinion, that's what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is discussing over here. That there were people that got yibam, and therefore we can't institute a new idea that's saying from now on you should only get chalitza. That will just retroactively cause a rumor to the people that did yibam that they're puzzled. So Eli Amrit Loyasu, if you're going to say that Beis Shammai never upheld their opinion, there was never a case of Beis Shammai's family, of Beis Shammai's fringe group marrying the co-wife, my manasa, what's Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel all upset about? Amar Rabbi Nachman says, no, really they didn't follow through their opinion. But that the question is about the co-wife. There were many co-wives that we always paskin like Beis Hillel. So the co-wife always went ahead and married without a chalitza. Now you're going to say, okay, let's just, satisfy Beis Shammai and say everybody who's married should just go back to their original yavam. And if they married somebody, a strange person, go back to the yavam, just get a chalitza to be yaitza. Well, their new marriage, the person they're married to now is going to think, oh, my wife now has to go to get a chalitza from somebody. That means I wasn't really married to her. He's going to be disgusted with her. That's what the Gemara says. This is what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says. Hanach tzaras the Beis Hillel, these co-wives of Beis Hillel that went without a chalitza, leBeis Shammai hechanabelu. What should we do according to Beis Shammai? Li chalzu, should we call them back and say, okay, you married somebody else without a chalitza? Come back, just get a chalitza, be yaitza, the chalitza from your former brother-in-law. Mimase gavrei, their new husbands are going to be disgusted with them because they're going to think, oh, now I wasn't really married to this woman. She had a zika with the brother-in-law. Should we make a man disgusted with his wife? Everything that the Torah does is sweet and its path is peace. So it would cause a problem in Shalom Bayis. So therefore, they didn't institute Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri's idea of now just requiring co-wives to have chalitza. So from now on, like the Mishnah says, the co-wife goes free because we paskin like Beis Hillel. Tashma,
just a quick question.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it make sense from Hillel's side to get chalitza? Because what if, let's say there wasn't a bas kol, or there was, and really there's a doubt, and that person gets married, not based on Yevamos, but just gets married to their co-wife like this. And what if there was some type of relationship there, and it was forbidden, and then there would be mamzer on the Hillel side as well. So why not just go ahead and get chalitza?
Hillel is 100% in this case. Hillel is 100% certain that there's no chalitza done on the yibam. The Rachel, the daughter, Patters disqualifies this woman from chalitza, from yibam or chalitza. She's Patters it totally. He's so confident in that.
Because if there was a doubt, and the woman, yes, and according to him, the woman could get married. She get married.
Right. It wasn't a doubt. He was so certain on his opinion. And that's why she goes without chalitza. In fact, having her do chalitza, that means she becomes a cholutz woman if she can't now go ahead and marry a Kohen, because she would be a chalitza woman.
Right.
So we don't.
Right.
So,
there's limitations.
But the idea was that Yochanan ben Nuri came up. Listen, according to Beis Shammai, you're supposed to do yibam over here, and according to Beis Hillel, if you did yibam, then the boy over here is a mamzer. So it's like they're so far removed from each other. So our Gemara is discussing whether did Beis Shammai upheld their opinion, and the Gemara does say they did.
I see.
Tashma, come in here. The Omer Rab Tarfon says that Rab Tarfon was a student of Beis Shammai, a major student of Beis Shammai. He said to Avani, I wish. Now imagine Rab Tarfon's brother is married to Rab Tarfon's daughter, like the case, and he wishes, like he's speaking idealistically. I can't wait till a co-wife of my own daughter comes. That means he's wishing, like his brother dies, I want to marry her. I want to marry the co-wife. Now, he doesn't really mean that, but what he's saying is, I so hold my rabbi's opinion, Shammai's opinion, that if I was in such a situation, I for sure would marry the co-wife. So we see from here that even many years later, Beis Shammai the fringe group Beis Shammai always went with their opinion and would marry co-wives, even though, according to Beis Hillel, this would lead to Bamzerim. So that Gemara answer is not such a proof. Ema ba'asi ena means he says, I'm going to marry you. There is a play on words that I'm going to marry her off to somebody else, not to me. Like Beis Hillel said, she could go free. That means he's saying, I can't wait till I show that Beis Shammai agreed with Beis Hillel. Why did he say, I can't wait till something like this happen? He wanted to be exclude the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri required even a chalitza. I can't wait to have this co-wife go free because I want to show that the halacha is like Beis Hillel. Tashma, come here. Maasa bebita Rabbi Yochanan ben Gamliel. The daughter of Rabbi Gamliel, okay, the daughter of Rabbi Gamliel was married to his brother, okay? Umeis b'leibanim. So Rabbi Gamliel's brother died without children. So now his daughter is falling to Yibim. The Yibim Rabbi Gamliel's Tarasa, and Rabbi Gamliel married the co-wife. So we see that you could go like Beis Shammai and marry the co-wife. So the Gemara asks back, how could this story even make a shred of sense? But Tizbara, does this story make sense? Rabbi Gamliel matamidi Beis Shammai, who was Rabbi Gamliel a student of Beis Shammai? Rabbi Gamliel is a great-great-grandson of Beis Hillel. So he would never go like Beis Shammai that you can marry the co-wife. So you got the story wrong. Ella, the story was a little different. Shani Bitish Rabbi Gamliel, the daughter of Rabbi Gamliel, the island is Habe. She's somebody who was sterile, who could not have children. Comes out, his brother didn't really marry the daughter. He was only married to the co-wife because the marriage to the daughter of Rabbi Gamliel was a mistaken marriage. And therefore Rabbi Gamliel did Yibam with the co-wife. So the Gemara says, wait a second. Hamidit Tanaseva, the end of that brisa says, Acherim Oimrim, other people have a different version of that story. Bita Shar Rabbi Gamliel, Aylin is Haisa. The daughter of Rabbi Gamliel was a sterile lady. Michlal, from that we can derive and deduce the Tanakama, the first opinion of the Brisa, Sovar Lav Islandess Haisa, that the Rabbi Gamliel's daughter was not a islandess, a sterile woman. She was a normal woman. So how could you say that? How do you answer this question of Rabbi Gamliel marrying his the co-wife of his daughter? Answers the Gemara, that means that really the story of the Rabbi Gamliel's daughter was that the daughter was a sterile woman. But the Tanakama holds that the only reason why it was a mekach to'os, there was a mistaken marriage, because Rabbi Gamliel's brother never realized that she was sterile. And therefore, it was a mistaken marriage. And so it turns out she was never married to the daughter. So therefore, the only one that fell to Yibam was the co-wife. The Acherim even add that even if he always knew that the daughter of Rabbi Gamliel was a sterile, he holds that even if Hikabah, even if he does recognize even though he does recognize this woman, she's the co-wife is mutter, because the Yibam will go now only to the co-wife, even if they had a very good marriage to the sterile woman, that will not exempt the co-wife from Yibam. That's the opinion of the Acherim. V'Iba Yisemer, another story says, another teretz of the story was Konas L'Sayf Girish Ika Benayo. Really, they were married, happily married. The brother was married to the daughter of Ram Gamliel. And then he married the co-wife. And then he divorced the co-wife. He divorced the daughter. But at one time, the co-wife was a co-wife to the daughter. So the Tanakama holds, the fact is that he divorced the daughter, and therefore, when she fell to Yibam, the only one that's falling to Yibam was the co-wife. That's why Ram Gamliel did Yibam to the co-wife. But according to the opinion of the Acherim, that was not the reason why he was allowed to marry the co-wife, because at the end of the day, this co-wife at one time was a co-wife to the Erva. Who cares if they divorced later on? So the only reason why they found the heter that he was allowed to marry the co-wife is because the daughter turned out to be an islandess. They added the word islandess, but the Tanakama holds you didn't have to say that the daughter of Rabbi Gamliel was an islandess. It was just a divorce situation. And according to the second Tana, divorce wouldn't work over here, because at one time they were married to each other, they were co-wives with each other. But the reason why he married the co-wife was simply because it turned out that the daughter was an islandess. The story was like this. It has nothing to do with anything. It was just a normal case. A man that the brother of Rabbi Gamliel did bia and married this lady on the condition, the daughter, on the condition she had no blemishes. She was completely 100%. And it turned out that she was not 100%. She had a mum, she couldn't walk, or whatever she did. So according to the Tanakama, even though the brother had relations with her, the kedushin is off, and she goes out without a get. According to the second Tana, she would not go out without a get. She would need a get, and therefore they were totally married. So why did she go out without a get? Because it turned out that this lady was an islandess, a complete sterile person. So with that, a sterile woman, maybe she needed a get, but a sterile woman would not exempt the co-wife from doing Yibam, and that's why Rabbi Gamliel did Yibam with the co-wife. We used to have a rabbi in Share, Rabbi Rackman, who was busy with this mekach toes when the husband went nuts and wasn't giving his wife a get. He mattered few people that the woman should go get married even without accepting a get. It was very, very, very controversial. Anyway, it's a long story for that, but this is the topics that we're dealing with. The Gemara says, Masav Rabbi Sharshia, Masav Rabbi Akiva. There's a story about Rabbi Akiva. We're basically back to the question, did we go with Chumras, Beishamai, and Basilil? Masav Rabbi Akiva, the story of Rabbi Akiva, Shalikat Esrik Be'echa B'Shvat. He picked an Esrik, the first of Shvat. Let's say, now the first of Shvat is a cutoff point. According to Beis Shammai, you're starting a brand new year for fruit trees, right? Beis Shammai holds that the Rosh Hashanah for a fruit tree is the first day of Shvat. So if it was year number 2, going into year number 3, according to Beis Shammai, all you have to do with this esrog tree is give off meiser ani, give the 10% to the poor person. But Rabbi Kiva was machmer, v'nog boy beis isurim. He gave two meisers. He gave meiser sheni, and he gave meiser ani on this tree. And the reason he did that, because according to Beis Shammai, you give Meiser Ani. According to the Beis Hillel, when does Rosh Hashanah for trees happen? The 15th day of Shvat. So up until the 15th day of Shvat, it's still the second year of the cycle, the Shemitah cycle, which you're only required to give Meiser Sheni. So Rabbi Kiva did Chumras, he wanted to be Machmer like Beis Shammai and Machmer like Beis Hillel. Echa k'divrei Beis Shammai, ve'echa k'divrei Beis Hillel. And how, by the way, how he gave two Meisers on this tree is very simple. He took 10% of the esrogim of this tree, and he transferred the value of that 10% onto money. With that money, he went to Jerusalem and used it as Meiser Sheni money. And the 10% of the fruits that he left here, he distributed it to the Aniyim. So with 10%, he did both, Meiser Sheni and Meiser Ani. But the fact is that he was so concerned about Beis Shammai's opinion, shows that Beis Shammai, even many years later, was still the fringe group upholding their opinions. Shma Mina, Asu. So you hear from here that the Beis Shammai always upheld their opinions. And for the Gemara, no. Rabbi Kiva Gemara is topically. He was not clear what Beis Hillel holds. It's not. He didn't know if Beis Hillel held. Maybe Beis Hillel held that the first day of Shvat is the Rosh Hashanah or Tu B'Shvat. He wasn't sure. So it wasn't that he was being machmer like the opinion of Beis Shammai and the opinion of Beis Hillel. He only held like Beis Hillel, but he wasn't sure what Beis Hillel held. Did they hold the first day of Shvat or the 15th day of Shvat? Mosiv Rabbi Bar Zitra. Zitra brings a story that we had in Sukkah. Remember this picture of this baby over here of Beis Shammai's Einikel, Shammai Hazakain's Einikel, and they brought her into the sukkah. They had a sukkah in the house, and they knocked open the roof and they put schach over there so that the little baby could sit in the sukkah. It's a whole question why he did that. But Ma'aseh b'yolda kalosa shel Shammai Hazaken, the daughter-in-law of Shammai Hazaken, gave birth. Upiches es hamaziba, and they opened up the roof. And they made schach on the bed, over a bed of the cotton, over the crib of the cotton. So Shma Mina also. So from here you see that the people of Beis Shammai followed through on their opinion. Now it's a little difficult, this question, because here we're not talking about Beit Shammai, we're talking about the original Shammai. And of course he's going to uphold his opinion that a baby needs to be brought into the sukkah. It's first of all, definitely was before the Bas Koil, and maybe at that time they weren't roiv then. So why wouldn't Shammai follow through on his opinion? But the Gemara seems that since it's in the Mishnayos, probably the whole Beis Shammai would do the same thing. So we see from here that even after many years later, Beis Shammai would always uphold their opinion, even if it was against Beis Hillel. So the Gemara says, "Hasam haraya oimel apushi avekavim." If it's not, it doesn't look so bad if Beis Shammai went in their opinion over here, because one could assume that the reason why somebody did open up the roof in their house was because he wanted to let in some air. He wanted to have a sunroof. So it doesn't look like he's doing it l'shem mitzvah or something like that. So it doesn't look like two Torahs. So there's nothing wrong in that case if you follow through like Beis Shammai's opinion. But again, in our mission, if you follow through like Beis Shammai's opinion, you could lead to mamzerim. Mosiv Marzitra asked the same question. There was a small trough, a small tub, let's say, that was in Jerusalem. And it didn't have, it just had a little bit of rainwater or water running from a mountain, but it didn't have the shear of a mikvah, but it had a hole in the wall. It had a hole in the wall of the trough, and it was connected to a real mikvah, like our mikvahs that have a hole that's connected to a real mikvah. And therefore, everybody would dip there, that was like the Kela mikveh in Yerushalayim, even though that tub itself didn't have 40 saw, but it was connected to something that did have 40 saw. And it had a small hole in it. Beis Shammai went and sent a message that this is a pasula mikvah. You have to do something. Beis Shammai holds that the hole has to be so big, like most of the wall is knocked down. Most of the wall has to be knocked down to connect the two mikvahs. Utnan, we learned in the Mishnah, Erev mikvahs kisheferes anayd, ba'oiv v'chalal shtei tzpais chayzos and mekayimim. Beis Hillel holds that it's enough the hole to be the size of 2 fingers, like the Sheferes Hanoid, which we discussed before. But it's only Beis Shammai that requires a big, connection. So we see that if Beis Shammai is already passing mikvahs in Jerusalem, that the fringe group did not agree always to Beis Hillel. They followed through on their opinion. Shma mina asus. From here, you see that Beis Shammai followed their opinion, even though they were the fringe group. So the Gemara says, no, there was nothing wrong if they followed through on their opinion in that case, because Hassam, somebody over there, Haraya, we go to Tezvava Mebeis, Haraya Oimela Pushamayu Ovid, that the reason why you're knocking the wall down because you want to make more water flow between the trough. Maybe there wasn't enough water in the trough, in the tub. So therefore, the trough in the tub, so therefore they made the hole bigger. But it didn't show that there's 2 Torahs, 2 different laws. But again, in our Mishnah, following through on the Beis Shammai's opinion leads to Mamzerim. Tashma, come in here. The Amar Rab Lazar Bar Tzadok. Rab Lazar Bar Tzadok said, when I learned Torah by Rabbi Yochanan HaCharani, look at the way he observes them. I saw he would eat crusty bread with salt during those years of hunger. He basically had nothing to eat. So Rabbi Lazar ben Tzadok, the student, was so concerned of this Rabbi Yochanan HaCharani, how he doesn't have enough to eat. I told my father about it. Amali told him, go bring him olives. And olive, and I brought him olives. And I want to point out to you that Rabbi Kanievsky, since I want to mention his name during the Shiva, he wrote a book about how to have a good memory. And it's a book that he wrote maybe when he was much, much younger, just got married, something like that. A book all about memory, all the school lists of all the Torah that's written in all the Chazal about having a good memory. And one of the things that he writes in the book is not to eat zaysim, not to eat olives, because olives, the Gemara says, is kosher l'shicha, it's not helpful for your memory. That's what he said. So, but there is a Gemara that says that olive oil is very good for your memory, if good for your head. It brings to Chachma. So Rab Shlomo Zalman Auerbach met Rab Chaim Kanievsky and told him that ever since you came out with the book, my wife stopped feeding me olives, and now I have nothing really to eat because I really like the olive with the olive oil. Anyway, so Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lazar Bar Tzadok's father sent Rabbi Yochanan olives. Raw ice and shein lachem. So Rabbi Yochanan HaCharani saw that they're wet. Now we know if they're wet, they become susceptible for tumah. Amali, he said to me, I don't eat olives. Maybe he said that's for the reason. So because it was assumed that he went with the opinion of Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, that this is tamei. These olives are susceptible to tumah. I told my father. Amali, he said to me, Leich ve'amor loy, go tell him. Chavius nekuva ha'iseh al sheshasabu shemarim. I know you paskin like Beis Hillel, and that the olives that became wet from the juice coming out of the olives makes it susceptible to tumah. But if you demonstrate that you don't want that juice, then it doesn't become susceptible to tumah. And really, it was made in a barrel that had a hole in it. So I really wanted the juice to come out of it, but somehow not all the juice came out of it because some sediment blocked the hole. Now we learned in the Mishnah, you have a barrel of olives that are rolling around. You don't have to make a hole in the barrel because even if they've been moist with all the juices coming out of the olives, it's just juice, so it doesn't make the olive susceptible to tumah. Well, Beis Hillel says, that juice is like a liquid that makes it susceptible to tumah unless you demonstrate an action showing that you did not want that. You have to make a hole in it. And they both agree that Beis Hillel will agree, you made a hole in it, but it didn't work. You weren't successful. So sumo shmarim she'itayra, if the sediment covered it up, then it is tar. It's pure. So va'afal pi shetalmud. So now the Gemara concludes the brisa. Va'afal pi shetalmud shamad hoya. even though Rab Loza Barab Tzodek was a student of Beis Shammai, right? Nevertheless, and so he doesn't care if there's juice on this because it wouldn't be Makabal Tuma according to Shammai. Call Masav Loyasal Kedei Beis. Whenever he in his business, he conducted himself like Basilo. So now that's what the Brisa ends off with, this praise of this Rab Loza Bar Tzodek. He went with Beis Hillel. It's mashma only he went with Beis Hillel, nobody else. Yama Bishlama also, if you want to say that the rest of the group upheld their opinion, the rest of Shammai's group upheld the opinion, Haine Revuse. That is the greatness of Rab Loza Bar Tzodek, that he went against his own group of Shammai and went with Beis Hillel. In his business, he conducted himself like Beis Hillel. Eli Amrit Loyosu, if the whole group, if none of Shammai's people upheld their opinion, they all agreed with Beis Hillel. My Revuse, what is the uniqueness of Rab Loza Bar Tzodek? So therefore, the Gemara ends. We're going to end over here, and we're going to continue tomorrow with the Tashma. It's one long sugya, so I'm going to just stop over here. Where we're holding right now is we brought a number of like two proofs, at least two proofs, that Beis Shammai in the time of the Mishnayos, even though they said their opinion and they know what Shammai Azakin held, the group itself always upheld their opinion no matter what. They did upheld their opinion. And yes, there were cases where the Yava married the Tzoras Erva. Okay.
Interesting. Thank you, Shkofer.
We left off by the Toshma, middle of the page, just like a third down page, a little more than a third. It's the next Toshma is just a longer piece, so we're going to leave it for tomorrow.
Sha'alu at Rabbi Yeshua.
What? Toshalis Rabbi Yeshua, right?
Okay.
Okay, but the answer is there already. The Gemara doesn't have to bring another proof anymore because we know.